have a very early flight.
I'm sorry. How are you doing?
Pete, what are you doing?
Don't blame your failure on me.
Are we still going to be ready?
Jesus, love again.
I'm tired of this.
It's supposed to get better.
What the flick, everybody? Mad Men, final season, the final episodes, said very dramatically. Season 7, the back half here, episode 3, The Forecast. And I was reading here on Vulture, which is nicely summing up some of the criticism. Again, I'm not signing up for this criticism, but but it's interesting, and it's you know, all these shows, they're so confident in themselves that they can head into these final 7 episodes of this seminal zeitgeisty show, right? And just like make it about this waitress named Diana, who you don't know. when we know that there's a clock ticking, again, I'm sort of stealing here from Vulture, but they're coalescing all the. They're like, hey man, we're now down to 4 episodes left of these people we know, and we didn't see Diana this week, but like what? We don't care. There are people I care about. I really want to know what happened to them. I think that was a great character. I wonder whether we've seen the last of her, but they did, and they threw us some Glenn this week.
I know something could happen to me, but I feel safe because I know you're mine.
Glenn, stop.
Okay, can we start that discussion?
Yeah, let's start on Glenn.
What a goddamn waste. I felt this episode, specifically the Glenn parts, are just such a waste. There's so much that takes away from your enjoyment of this episode through Glenn. Not only is Glenn poor at being on the screen while pretending to be a character, acting, I believe it's called, but then you see the nepotism. That's Matthew Weiner's kid. And so you see the placement of him in there as just something that I value so highly, which is this show. And then you see something like nepotism, which you've seen from the get-go.
Okay.
Like, that kid was never qualified. It's not his fault. He was never qualified to be in the show.
All right, I didn't know until this second that was Matthew Weiner's kid.
Neither did I.
I think the fact that I mean he is unsettling, but so is the character, and I think that's a conscious choice. That character has always given me the creeps, and he still does. And I think that bringing him back around, I think closes a lot of loops in terms of showing him as a young adult who is still obsessed with Betty, and also kind of setting up that great speech that the daughter has at the end about both parents basically being suckers for anyone who will pay attention to
Yes,
them.
and that's one of those things where I get in the planning of the show on how it's going to play out. That is a good plan. But there are many opportunities they had along the way to account for the fact the execution of that character as creepy. I don't need meta creepy is not what this show needs.
I think
I need to believe that Betty kind of wants to bang this kid. And
Right.
I'm watching, like, January Jones doing some pretty good acting to pretend that this kid is at all desirable in any way. Everything about it makes my skin crawl, but not because
Right, not
that
the way
was
it's
the right
supposed to.
casting.
Right.
It's a different way.
But see, I think it would be muddying the waters if Betty were into him because he was so hot. Betty is into him because he's so into Betty, and she doesn't get a lot of that in her life. And that's what she finds appealing.
But that just wasn't in
the
that
weirder and creepier that kid is, the more effective that is, because it's not about Betty being like hot for the teen stud next door. It's about Betty being like, oh, finally, thank God, somebody sees me and wants me.
There's just no truth to that relationship between Betty and Glenn, between Glenn and Sally. Like, those aren't true relationships. Those are things you have to kind of go, what were the writers thinking?
I could see Glenn befriending Sally, if only as a way to keep tabs on what Betty's up to.
But I believed the first Glenn and Betty, although I'd largely forgotten about it. But I believed that first time, but he was 13, right? There was something, and he was so needy, and almost the way her kids didn't need her, and so that, to me, worked better as a kid. But now, almost seeing him as a man and capable of being involved in an actual sexual relationship with someone, you would almost think that Betty would be, like, again, I sort of agree that there was, I thought it was bizarre when she...
He's 18. I mean, yes, technically he's a man. He can be shipped off to war. He can drink a beer. But he's still working his shit out.
Right, but I'm saying that, but I'm back to the 18-year-old who Betty might be attracted to wouldn't be that kid. I'm more on Brett's side on that.
I get it, but I get that we get at the end when Sally's making that statement to her parents. I never thought really of Dawn and Betty being similar until until Sally says, "You just want anyone to be interested in you whatsoever."
And then you just
Maybe that
ooze.
was there, but this was the first time it was fully articulated, and I go like, "Oh my God, are they perfect for each other? Are they perfectly terrible for each other?"
Or they're exactly
But I
perfect to
tell
be
you,
apart.
look, I don't know whether I have this, whether I like Don more than the writers intend for me to like Don. But because of the bizarre circumstances and the difficulty I had getting this show last night late and then watching it today, I watched the back 15 minutes last night, which was on when I turned on the TV when I got home late, and then watched the whole thing start to finish today. So I saw the scene of Don with the girls at the Chinese restaurant twice, right? He was fine. He did nothing wrong.
No, he did nothing
wrong. He gets a 10. Like, he was polite to that girl. As soon as she expressed any interest, he was like, "Yes, I live in the penthouse." And then he turned to Sally and he was like, if you ever think of what you want to do, like he didn't.
No, he didn't do anything wrong, but you have to remember, Sally is looking at him through the filter
Totally.
of having just
Yeah.
gone through this stuff with Glenn, still having, the baggage of having caught him with Mrs. Rosen,
No, I
and all
get-
the other stuff.
I get why Sally reacts wrong. I just want to make it. I just was like, Don, actually, he has done something wrong. It's an understandable reaction. She'd just seen her
No,
mother.
it's a button getting pressed.
Yeah.
Can we talk about Mathis?
Yes.
Because that's another thing we get. That's another thing of a new character having some significant plot points, but that at least is used
To underscore the other characters.
to understand
yeah.
Peggy and to underscore Don.
I think one of my favorite lines of dialogue for this entire show is Don saying, "You don't have any character," and Mathis responding, "You don't either. You're just handsome."
Yeah, totally.
Like, that's something that either Betty or Megan could have easily said and had the backup for.
Right, and this is the next generation of the company. So Don's tasked with saying where the company's going, and we're watching the next generation of the company just not get what was
Yeah.
cool, what
They're
got
not
me
that
to
guy,
like this.
yeah.
Yeah, there's no that.
We
guy.
don't want to see Mad Men 2. Like, I don't want to see that company in the 70s with a bunch of guys like Mathis, because Don is right. I mean, first of all, Mathis is wrong, as we well know. He's not just handsome. It definitely helps that guy with that vision and that way of expressing things was handsome, right? But I think...
Yeah, but character is not necessarily Don's strong point. He's got a lot going on. But I
Well,
mean,
we see so much that no one else sees. I think thematically, Mathis is tied to Sally because we see the next generation of whatever who has had specific interactions with their forebears, right?
Sure.
And seen them at their worst and drawn conclusions.
Sure.
When I saw all of Dawn growing up, and if you look at this episode, you see Betty and Dawn looking at temptation and, in his daughter's friends and in Glenn and saying, "No, I'm grown up from that now." Now, what I thought was interesting was watching Betty and Dawn grapple with the fact that, like, even though I feel like I've turned this corner, the people who have seen me make my mistakes and haven't seen me 24 hours of the day still judge me as that, not yet formed, immature for my age kind of person.
And that's how most people in your lives judge you.
Yeah.
Like maybe the person you're with, your husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend, maybe they won't. And maybe your parents might see it a little bit. But even your friends, I still hear from my friends, the things they make fun of me of, sometimes it's funny. It's never hurtful. I don't mind it. But it's always like, I'm like, yeah, I got it. That was true when I was 27. That was 21. It was 21 years ago. I know where my keys. I know where my keys are now, and
I would never do that.
Right.
Yeah, clearly we're looking at because even the younger people in the office before, like say Stan or whoever or Goldberg, like they were at least more of the era of Don and Betty, whereas now we're getting into the baby boomers.
Yeah.
This is the Dr. Spock generation, for Sally, Mathis, all these kind of people. And yeah, it's a completely different dynamic, and they can't just ape the one that came before him, which is like what literally Mathis tries to do, and it just doesn't play at all.
As always, what's happening in the world is so relevant. I mean, they are literally sort of disillusioned. They don't have there is no built-in respect for an older generation.
Or institutions.
They saw Kent State. We got at least a mention of Kent State. We get We get a massive already turn in the Vietnam War. We haven't had Watergate yet. But
Vietnam hasn't been mentioned on this show in ages. I was just in reality.
and in fact, when Glenn gives his speech about why he joined,
Because I'm brave and I love this country and I want to protect it and everyone in it.
it's so like, I love my country and I'm supposed to defend the people in the country. Like I just say what I'm I'm regurgitating, what I hear.
And even with the twist of I'm going so that all the poor black people don't have to go in my place.
Right, he throws that in there, but what he's trying to do is ape his stepfather, who has said, they fight over there to defend our freedom here, and they're the bravest Americans we know.
And he kind of had to, he said.
But he doesn't believe that, and
No,
Sally doesn't
he just
believe
screwed
it.
up his grades.
And what's interesting is that Don's inability to express the future or dissatisfaction with everyone, even Peggy, who gave a pretty good answer, their ability to express the future. It's almost like if I didn't, as I was thinking this morning, how ridiculous this sounds, it's almost like Don's final step when he leaves, and unless he's like hit by a bus or something, but if he quits, it's like he's going to go be a speechwriter for Muskie or McGovern, which would be amazing. But this is all of a sudden, it's a guy thinking big picture. When he talked about protesting or rebelling, when he said, "You're going to Washington, you guys are going to protest," he wasn't like Betty would have been, "Oh, you're going to go protest?" He was like, "You gonna go protest?" He doesn't. I didn't get disdain for any of that, and we also significantly didn't get it from Joan when she had that moment with Bruce Greenwood, where she was like, "Yeah, I'm for the underdog. Oh God, the low-income housing instead of a golf course."
How do you feel about that relationship with Bruce Greenwood? I feel it's a little like bow tie-y. Like we might give Joan someone to love.
They haven't made it so super easy for her. They've still got a couple episodes, and he's clearly having to make compromises and stuff. So we'll see. I mean, I'm not averse to her having a little happiness.
I mean, she would, and she probably would. I mean, it would be normal. She's now got the career thing straightened out. She would certainly be open to it, especially this. I mean, first, let's not pretend she's not strikingly beautiful and successful. It would make sense that a 57-year-old rich divorcee would be like, I like that, especially because he's probably not a creep. Like, he doesn't want a Megan. He wants a grown-up.
And she's not so desperate for a husband that she would have married Bob Benson just to have the stability.
Right, and they did a little, that was in the preview, like a reminder that she wants a legitimate relationship.
This episode was, we were talking before, there's the apartment metaphor. Like, everything that the realtor is saying about the apartment is basically Don.
Totally.
The sort of, great things happen once, now kind of reeks of failure a little bit, And then the show itself, this episode, as Matt pointed out on Vulture, is kind of this metaphor of itself in terms of, what is the future? We don't really know. We're running out of time here. 1970 is coming.
I feel like Don has made such enormous progress that that was a parenting moment. Like, he didn't scream at her or get defensive. Like, he was like, "Yeah, okay, insult me, fair enough." Right. But there's still the "Hey, I'm your father," and then with a real sender-off moment of, "Now it's up to you to be more than that."
Yeah, that was great.
And she was like,
"Oh shit."
and Betty, I think, would never. Have said that. So, and he didn't sleep with the realtor. He made no effort to.
No.
Diana represented something to it, but she was a serious woman. She's reading John Dos Passos. She's got a. But even if we never see her again, he couldn't, like, that sin that she's committing, like, he wouldn't even go for that. Even Don, or he just recognized her sadness, or I don't know.
I'm not saying that Don is a failure or that he's...
Just lay off, man. I'm just saying. He's awesome.
What I'm saying is that he is not like Don Draper, as we have come to know him over the years. He has suffered losses and he has faced defeats. And so I think he's in the process of figuring out not just the future of their company, but of himself, And I think this whole last chunk of it is sort of like, what now? Where does Don Draper fit in a changing world?
I like that. I don't know.
No, exactly.
I have no clue what's going to happen to him next. And we end this episode on a literal blank slate.
Yeah, outside of a closed door.
I'm operating from hope. Like, I like him and I want him, this growth that I'm seeing at least, to continue. But when you get older, you get smaller. And Don was a big, grand guy, and then you get older, there are other grand guys, and they know music better, and the girls like them more, and you have to decide what kind of guy you're going to be when you're not the grand guy. The world gets bigger and you shrink. And literally, that's what a midlife crisis is to some extent, right? Is how do you fit in and try to, no, I have a freaking Porsche and I can do whatever I want. And right now, I feel like Don is sort of wrestling with those big questions in an appropriate way.
Yeah, I mean, the selling the apartment, again, metaphorical for the transition of his life and figuring out, it has been laid bare by Megan and everybody else, and so now he has something of a clean slate to move on to whatever the next thing is.
He also has the opportunity to rewrite that memo he wrote about the tobacco industry,
right?
Because he's faced with saying something, and what is he going to say?
And it's so trivial for a corporate retreat in the Bahamas. Like, nobody's going to be listening. Nobody's going to care. And he's so...
But if you had to write that prospectus on what the future of Sterling Cooper is, what would you say?
Yeah.
I would ask Peggy the way he did.
Right, but he doesn't think... But the decision he seemed to be coming to, which was there is no greatness coming at an advertising agency.
Right.
Yeah. That's why I thought, oh my God, he's going to go be a speechwriter. Because we know he could be good at it,
sure.
right? He's the theme guy. He could write speeches.
Well, we may do things for bigger clients or better ones, but ultimately we are advertising, and that's all we're going to do.
Yeah, he's like, the jingle's too long. That's like essentially his big revelation.
Yeah,
make
with
the tagline shorter.
Make the tagline, put a little tink in it. Like, yeah, what's wrong with that? Use that, gotta go.
Yeah.
But that guy should have gotten fired. Like, I was like that. If that's, he was right about that too. He was parenting there too. Like, hey man, I didn't tell you to use my line. I told you to solve the situation.
Yeah.
You could have done it. You didn't. Now you're insulting me.
I have to say, though, after all the shit that Joan has had to slog through in terms of how she got her partnership, it's interesting to know that Don also served a sexual purpose for making a client happy for the gay Lucky Strikes guy.
Oh, for what's his name?
He just didn't know he was doing it. He
just didn't know it.
Do it.
Yeah, anyway, this is, right, there is a big generational divide there at that agency. All right, man, so 3 more until the final one.
Yikes.
Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll be back.